When we think about what the future might look like, we usually think about the impact of climate, AI, and aging societies. But how often do we think about the future of nations? Here is a view of the Earth from outer space, a world without political borders. Now we see changes in national borders since 1800. We take for granted that our countries are stable, even permanent. But history shows us that they're, in fact, prone to change more often than we think. What causes borders to change? What determines the size of nations? Over the next few minutes, I will attempt to show nation formation has changed significantly in favor of smaller, more socially cohesive nations, and that they're pointing the way by their positive example towards maybe even a superior model for our futures. So let's get started. For most of history, prosperity was about conquest. A country's status and power has equated with size, its territorial reach, natural resources, military might, tax base, the size of its domestic market. Smallness was associated with weakness, inability to act, even a question about surviving. This bigger means better mindset encouraged empire building. Think of Alexander the Great, the Roman Empire, Napoleon, or Stalin. The British Empire in 1911 was the largest empire in history, yet at its peak, it controlled only 25% of the world's population. At some point, the advantage of expansion ceased. Otherwise, we would have experienced the United States of the world. It turns out that the cost of social cohesion at some point outweighs the benefits of scale. Different languages, ethnicities, social norms, distances. My first thesis is that modernity has radically altered the formula of nation formation. The advantages of size have declined considerably. Commodities and capital intensive, they're unprofitable and environmentally damaging. So who wants them? Big militaries are costly and often lead to conflicts. Economic power, in fact, is decoupled from size. In a knowledge-based economy, it's innovation and talent that matter. Nimbleness is now essential to adapt to a world of accelerating change. Think back 20 years ago, we didn't have Facebook, Google Maps, Tesla, Airbnb, Bitcoin. Spotify, the Swedish music streaming company, didn't exist 20 years ago either. Its most successful market in the world is Chile, with a market penetration of over 60%. But Spotify doesn't even have a company in Chile, nor does it employ one worker there. The cost of shipping has declined 80% since 1940. For products sold over the internet, like Spotify's, the cost of distance is zero. So the world has shrunk, and meanwhile, it's changing faster by the day. Societies are losing their social cohesion. Think of Brexit, Trump, Gilets jaunes. Wherever we look, there's a declining emphasis on marriage, families, religion, and communities, and the emergence of identity groups across sexuality, gender, race, even generation, with narrower and confusing categories like X, Y, and Z. There's more emphasis on me and less on we. And think of the signal-to-noise ratios, the rise of fake news, social media platforms such as Facebook, Instagram, and Google that are designed to maximize our attention, not improve our understanding. Taken together, the declining value of size and the increasing cost of social cohesion means that smaller, more cohesive societies have distinct advantages. So we may witness the emergence of more of them. But this is really not new. It's happened before. Denmark is a tiny fraction of itself compared to what it was in the 16th century. The British Empire morphed into the Commonwealth, and then the United Kingdom. Who would have thought 5 years ago, let alone 50 years ago, Northern Ireland would consider uniting with Ireland? Economies of scale is to economics what gravity is to physics. The notion that greater efficiency comes with greater size. Here is what we would expect to see if there were a close relationship between the population of a nation and its ability to produce wealth, in this instance, GDP per capita. But in reality, there is a weak, almost random relationship when one studies the data across all nations, meaning that size doesn't seem to matter at all. What emerges instead is a cluster of small, outperforming nations, outliers, as they say in statistics. Switzerland, Ireland, Singapore, Sweden, Denmark, Finland, the Netherlands, and Israel. Big things come in small packages. 9 out of 10 of the most competitive nations in the world have populations of less than 20 million people. 15 of the top 20 nations, ranked by the United Nations Human Development Ranking, are small countries. 11 of the 15 per capita income. All the 10 countries ranked in terms of happiness are small countries. A similar pattern emerges when we look across a number of important performance metrics: inequality, equitable treatment of women, confidence in government, CO2 emissions. Singapore, for instance, spends the least amount per student on education, but achieves the highest PISA scores. The Dutch have the best pension funds in the world, according to rankings by Mercer. Their success is due to excellence, not clout. These nations, what I call S8 nations, achieve twice the level of competitiveness as their G20 or large counterparts. What's interesting is that their outperformance is accelerating just at a time when the larger nations are declining. Despite their outperformance, S8 nations lack voice among multinational institutions, such as the United Nations, IMF, or the World Economic Forum. Participation and leadership in such forums has traditionally been based on power rather than excellence. But wherever we look, it seems difficult being a larger nation these days. Hardly a day goes by when yet another doomsday scenario is put forward. So much of what we read and hear is about failure rather than success. But progress throughout history has always been about finding something that works and reverse engineering, whether it was the wheel or the iPhone. Ironically, many of the solutions to our problems are already here. We just need to look over the garden hedge to find them. And here are a few examples. Copenhagen is well on its way to becoming the first carbon neutral city in the world by 2025, in good part because it has replaced cars with bicycles. Here is a major thoroughfare in Copenhagen in 1970 compared to today. The Danes have taught us what it's like to live at 3 kilometers per hour. Israel leads the world in eradicating COVID. It has the highest per capita number of vaccinations in the world, head and shoulders above any other country. Finland's new prime minister and majority of cabinet are women in their 30s. New Zealand passed a law last year called naked produce, preventing the sale of fruits and vegetables in grocery stores if they're wrapped in plastic, hence the name naked. Why are more innovations coming from these smaller nations? Well, in the first case, they're more exposed to exogenous forces, so they must be more adaptive, and they're more inclined to experiment. Their greater social cohesion means they are better able to deliberate complex issues and intermediate social consensus. Their vulnerability makes them more modest. It is in fact this vulnerability which forces them to be proactive rather than reactive, and thus arrive in many instances at the future first. Their journeys are unique, and they provide us with a different framework, and they may even point us towards a new order, one more suited for the futures we are about to face. Let us compare. The world will likely grow slower in the future as societies realize that growth cannot be infinite with finite resources. We should focus more on quality and less on quantity, more on resilience and less on growth. Advancement based on merit rather than privilege leads to more productive and fairer societies. Confrontation throughout history has been costly and seldom leads to shared and lasting agreement. In several critical areas, such as climate, debt, and pensions, postponement of gratification, even if it requires sacrifice, leads to superior, more sustainable outcomes. Kicking the can is a strategy destined to lose. To realize this, smaller, successful nations have adopted a different social architecture, not one focusing on left versus right or throwing bricks at each other, or one where more government and less markets, or more free markets and less government, but a new order based on more free markets and a better government. Yes, free markets are effective across a wide spectrum of our needs, from paper clips to Teslas, but free markets cannot solve climate, pandemics, immigration, or obesity. For this, we need better governments. And common problems such as climate and pandemics require shared solutions, so governments need to work together more effectively. We're all in this boat together, whether we like it or not. There is no time to waste. Our futures will be very different to our pasts, also more challenging. Societies will be confronted with an unprecedented series of stress tests. Could we have another pandemic, or could COVID mutate? What about the climate? There is no planet B. 100-year lives were a mathematical possibility 20 years ago, but now a distinct probability. Towards this end, we started a new initiative called S8 Nations. It's based on the following thought experiment. Imagine bringing together the world's most impactful people from the world's most innovative and collaborative nations, and putting them in a room and asking them to come up with bold solutions. A group that seeks out and recognizes the best practice, irrespective of its origins, and then provides a good housekeeping seal to encourage the proliferation of progress, based on excellence, not on power. We need to reimagine the world. We need to dare to see our lives in a wholly different light. What can we learn from other societies? Are we doing our best? If my talk has nudged you towards seeking answers to these questions, I consider it a success. I'm James Breiding, co-founder of S8 Nations. Thank you.